You'll never be enough, she said. The single dad left. Without a word. She said it in front of everyone. Rebecca Harlow, senior partner at Harlow and Vance Consulting, looked at the single dad standing in the doorway of the conference room and said, loudly enough for 8 colleagues to hear, "Men like you are never enough. Not for this firm, not for anyone." The conference room on the 31st floor of the Meridian Tower smelled like fresh coffee and quiet money. Leather chairs, a view of the city that went on until it became sky. Rebecca Harlow sat at the head of the table in a blazer that cost more than a month of Cole Reardon's rent, flanked by her deputy, Patrick Ewan, who had already picked up his pen to write something down. 8 consultants lined the long table, all of them watching. Cole stood in the doorway in the only suit he rotated through anymore. Charcoal gray, ironed that morning with a travel iron balanced on the bathroom counter while his daughter Maya brushed her teeth at the sink beside him. He held a manila folder. His interview confirmation printout was inside it. He was 12 minutes early. He had said nothing yet. "This role requires full commitment," Rebecca continued, her voice carrying the smooth authority of someone accustomed to rooms rearranging themselves around her. 60, sometimes 70 hours. Weekend calls, client dinners until 10. We've had fathers apply before. They always think they can manage it. They can't. She tilted her head. "You have a daughter, 7 years old, single parent." She'd clearly read the reference materials. "You'll never keep up, and frankly, I don't have time to wait for you to figure that out." Patrick Ewan was still writing. Nobody at the table said a word. What Rebecca Harlow did not know was that the man she'd just dismissed in front of 8 witnesses had built the client infrastructure that currently generated 40% of her firm's recurring revenue. What Patrick Ewan did not know was that the manila folder Cole was holding contained more than an interview confirmation. What none of them knew, what nobody in that 31st floor conference room had thought to check, was that Cole Reardon had not come to Harlow and Vance looking for a job. He had come to buy it. By Friday, Rebecca Harlow's name would be removed from the firm's letterhead. By Monday, Patrick Ewan would be applying for positions at 3 competitor firms, all of whom would decline. And Cole Reardon, the single dad who had walked out of that conference room without a single word, would be sitting in the same leather chair at the head of that same table, deciding what came next. But that was still 4 days away, and the morning had started, as it always did, with Maya. The alarm went off at 5:45. Cole was already awake. He'd been awake since 5, lying in the dark, listening to the city, running numbers in his head the way he used to run plays in the early years, not anxiously, just carefully, accounting for every variable before the day began. He had a board call at 7. Maya's school bus came at 7:50. The interview at Harlow and Vance was at 9. His attorney was expecting a decision by noon. He got up quietly. Maya's room was at the end of the hall, door half open, the nightlight still glowing. He checked on her the way he always checked on her, a long look from the doorway, just making sure of her. She was sprawled sideways across the bed the way she always slept, one arm hanging off the edge, her stuffed elephant wedged under her chin. He let her sleep another 20 minutes. The kitchen was small but organized. He'd learned that after Claire left, when it was just the 2 of them, chaos was a luxury you couldn't afford. Every shelf had a system. Every morning had a shape. Coffee first, then Maya's breakfast laid out before she woke up. Oatmeal with brown sugar, because it was the only breakfast she'd eat without negotiation. A glass of orange juice, a note folded into a triangle the way she'd asked him to do ever since 2nd grade. He wrote the note. "Good things are coming today, Bug. Save me a hug for 4 o'clock. He folded it into a triangle and leaned it against the juice glass. Then he stood at the window with his coffee and looked at the city. He'd moved them here 18 months ago, after the sale. Not to a penthouse, not to the neighborhood he could have afforded. To this apartment, 3 blocks from Maya's school, with a park at the end of the street and a bakery on the corner that did good croissants on Saturday mornings. He'd chosen it because it was the right size for 2 people who were figuring things out together. And because Maya had pressed her face against the window on the viewing and said, "Dad, I can see the park from here." That had been the only number that mattered. He dressed in the charcoal suit, travel ironed. His watch was the same one he'd worn for 6 years, not flashy, not cheap, just reliable and scratched in the way of a watch that's been worn through things. He didn't own cufflinks. He'd sold the ones Claire gave him the year after she left, along with the Rolex and the BMW and most of the furniture from the old house. He kept Maya's drawings, her books, the photo on his nightstand. When Maya woke up, she walked into the kitchen, still squinting, sat on the stool, and looked at the folded note without touching it. "What does it say?" she asked. "You can read." She unfolded it, read it, refolded it exactly back into a triangle, and put it in her pocket. Good things like what? Good things like pancakes this weekend. Good things like your science project. Good things like maybe the thing with the firm today. She wrapped both hands around her orange juice. "The firm is the one with the mean lady you told Grandpa about?" Cole paused. "I didn't say mean." "You said difficult," Maya said, in the voice of someone who knew the difference. "Grandpa said that meant mean. Grandpa has a way of cutting through to the point." She nodded solemnly. "You're going to be okay, Dad." He looked at her over his coffee mug. "Yeah. I mean it," she said. "You're the best at everything. You're biased." "I'm 7, she said. "I'm allowed to be biased." He made her eat the oatmeal. She made him add extra brown sugar. They were even. He arrived at the Meridian Tower at 8:48. 12 minutes early, because 12 minutes early was the minimum standard, and also because parking had been easier than expected, which he'd taken as a decent sign. The lobby was the kind of lobby that was designed to communicate power before you reach the elevator. Marble floors, security desk staffed by 2 men in matching ties. A wall of frosted glass behind which you could see shapes moving without knowing what they were doing. Cole checked in, took his visitor badge, rode the elevator to the 31st floor. The receptionist at Harlow & Vance had a headset and the specific expression of someone who handled 40 calls an hour and had learned to smile at everything with equal neutrality. She showed him to a chair outside the conference room. He sat, set the manila folder on his knee, waited. Through the glass partition, he could see the conference room filling. Rebecca Harlow came in last, coffee in hand, said something to Patrick Ewan that made him laugh. She moved to the head of the table. A few people glanced at Cole through the glass. He didn't look away. At 9:02, the receptionist said, "Mr. Reardon, they're ready." He stood, picked up the folder, walked to the door. He opened it. And that was when Rebecca Harlow said what she said. She had finished by the time he crossed the threshold. The room was quiet. Patrick Ewan still had his pen on the page. The 8 consultants had gone very still in the specific way that people go still when they've witnessed something they're not sure they should have. Cole looked at Rebecca Harlow for a moment. He didn't say anything. He stepped back, pulled the door closed behind him. The receptionist looked up from her headset. He handed her the visitor badge, smiled once, not a performance, just a reflex, and walked to the elevator. He pressed the button. The doors opened. He stepped in. He rode down 31 floors in silence, walked through the marble lobby, pushed through the glass doors, and stood on the sidewalk in the morning air. His phone was already buzzing. What happened? His attorney, Daniel Finch. Cole had texted him from the elevator with just 2 words, "We're moving," and Daniel had apparently been waiting by his phone. Cole typed back, "They made it easy. Send the offer tonight." He put the phone in his pocket, stood on the sidewalk for another few seconds, his face turned up slightly into the wind. Then he went to get Maya from school at 4 o'clock, which is when she'd saved him the hug. What Cole had not explained to Rebecca Harlow, because she had not given him the space to explain anything, was why he had scheduled the interview at all. Harlow & Vance Consulting was a mid-size firm with a strong regional client base and a structural problem. Its founding partner, James Harlow, had retired 2 years ago and sold his controlling stake to a private equity group that had since grown impatient. The firm's revenue had plateaued. Its flagship clients, 3 of them, representing the bulk of their stable income, were quietly shopping for alternatives. Rebecca Harlow, who had inherited the senior partner title but not James's client relationships, was managing an increasingly difficult situation by projecting the certainty she no longer had. Cole knew this because he'd spent 4 months studying it. He also knew, and this was the part Rebecca hadn't checked, hadn't thought to check, because why would she check the background of a single father in a travel-ironed suit? That 2 of Harlow & Vance's 3 flagship clients had come to Cole's previous firm under his direct management. He had built those relationships. He understood what they needed and why they'd stayed. And he understood, more recently, that they were preparing to leave. He'd had conversations with both of them, quietly, over the past 6 weeks. He hadn't scheduled the interview to get a job at Harlow & Vance. He'd scheduled it as a final professional courtesy, a chance to speak directly to the people running the firm before his acquisition offer moved forward. He'd told Daniel as much. Daniel had thought it was more generous than strictly necessary. Cole had said he'd rather look someone in the eye before changing their world than not. He'd tried. The offer went in that Thursday evening. Daniel filed it at 6:15, and by 7:30 Cole's phone was showing 3 missed calls from a number he didn't recognize, which turned out to be the private equity group's managing director, a man named Ellis Brandt, who had apparently seen the offer, understood immediately what it meant, and decided that calling Cole directly was the fastest way to assess whether this was real. It was real. Cole let Ellis talk for 4 minutes before he said, "I'll tell you what I told my attorney. The offer is full and fair, and it's been structured to protect the firm's existing staff. Everyone below senior partner keeps their role through the transition period, minimum 18 months. He paused. What happens after that depends on performance. "And the senior partners?" Ellis asked. "That's a conversation for the transition process," Cole said. "I'm not going to discuss individual positions at this stage." What he didn't say, and what Ellis Brandt would figure out on his own within the next 48 hours. Rebecca Harlow's role as senior partner was not part of the forward structure Cole had designed. Neither was Patrick Ewens, whose specific function, essentially managing Rebecca's calendar and reputation, had no analog in Cole's model. He wasn't doing it out of anger. He was doing it because the structure didn't work and everyone who'd looked at the numbers honestly already knew it. Rebecca had been running on confidence and credential for 2 years, while the firm's foundation quietly weakened beneath her. That kind of situation, Cole had learned, didn't fix itself. He put the phone down and went to check on Maya. She was in her room building something elaborate with the magnetic tiles they'd bought at the Science Museum 6 months ago. A tower, 4 stories tall, which was the record. She looked up when he leaned in the doorway. "How'd it go? The thing with the firm? Good, I think. Did the mean lady say sorry?" He thought about it honestly. No, but it worked out. Maya added another tile to the tower. It held. Did you do the face? Which face? The one where you don't say anything but they know you're done talking. She demonstrated a very specific expression that was uncannily accurate. Cole laughed. Where did you learn that face? From you, she said. You do it at restaurants when the order's wrong. She went back to the tower. You should use it more. Noted, he said. He went to make dinner. The offer was accepted on Friday at 2:17 p.m. Ellis Brandt sent a single-line email and then forwarded the signed documentation to Daniel without further comment. Cole was at Maya's school for the spring science fair when his phone buzzed with Daniel's message. It's done. Congratulations, you own a consulting firm. He read it standing in front of Maya's project, a hand-painted display board titled, Why Do Bees Know Where to Go? While Maya stood beside him explaining to two other parents how waggle dances worked. She was using her most serious voice, the one she used for things that mattered. He typed back, Thank you. Talk Monday. Pocketed the phone. Turned to listen to his daughter explain the mathematics of bee navigation with total confidence to two adults who were genuinely impressed. He was too. He was, always. Rebecca Harlow received the formal notification that afternoon via courier. A letter from Daniel's firm outlining the acquisition, the new ownership structure, and the revised organizational plan, which included her transition package. The package was generous. Cole had been specific about that. She called the private equity office first. Ellis Brandt's assistant told her he was unavailable. She called two of the firm's other senior staff. One didn't answer. One answered and told her very gently that the acquisition seemed well structured, and they were going to give it a fair evaluation. She called Patrick Ewan last. He'd already heard through the staff email that had gone out at 3 o'clock. Is it real? She asked. It's real, he said. There was a long pause on the line. He was in the conference room for less than 30 seconds, she said. I know, Patrick said. He didn't say a word. I know, Patrick said again, quieter this time. She didn't call back after that. By Monday, the three flagship clients, the ones Cole had originally built, the ones who had been quietly shopping for alternatives, confirmed in writing that they were remaining with the firm through the transition. All three. Cole had expected two. The third surprised him. He called Maya at 4 o'clock from his new office, the one with the view that went on until it became sky, to tell her things had gone well. She asked if there would be pancakes this weekend. He said yes. She said that was the most important part. He said he agreed. He didn't move into the corner office immediately. He kept the smaller one across the hall for the first 2 weeks, the one with the window that faced a courtyard instead of the skyline. He liked the courtyard. There was a tree in it that looked like it had been there longer than the building. The staff were careful around him at first, the way staff are always careful around new ownership, watchful, polite, waiting to understand what kind of person they were dealing with. He tried to make it simple. He held a full staff meeting his first Monday. Told them the same things he'd told Ellis Brandt. Full employment through the transition period, performance-based assessments after that. No surprises, no games. He answered every question that got asked and said, I don't know yet. But I'll find out when something came up that he didn't have an answer for. One of the junior consultants, a young woman named Priya, who had been at the firm for 8 months and clearly hadn't decided yet whether to stay, asked him directly, Why did you want this firm? You could have started from scratch. He thought about it the honest way. Because there are good people here who've been operating without the right structure. That's fixable. People aren't always fixable. He paused. And starting from scratch takes longer. I have a daughter. I don't waste time. Priya nodded slowly. She stayed. 4 months later, Cole was in the conference room, the same one, the leather chairs and the city view, when his assistant knocked and opened the door. "There's a woman asking to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. Rebecca Harlow." The room was quiet. 2 of his new consultants were at the table. They looked at him. "Send her in," Cole said. Rebecca came in alone. She looked the same and also different in the way people look when something has shifted in their foundation. The blazer was still good. The posture was still precise. But she stood in the doorway with her hands at her sides, rather than moving to a chair, which told him she understood she was on different ground. "I won't take much of your time," she said. "Okay. I wanted to say something I should have said before." She looked at him steadily. "What I said in this room was wrong. Not strategically wrong. Personally wrong. I made an assumption about who you were based on circumstances I didn't fully understand, and I said it out loud, which made it worse." She paused. "I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know I understand what happened." The 2 consultants were very focused on their laptops. Cole looked at her for a moment. "I appreciate that," he said. "Genuinely." She nodded, turned to go. "Rebecca." She stopped. "The firm's restructuring a pro bono advisory panel, schools and nonprofits. We need someone who knows client management at a senior level." He let that sit for a second. "If you're interested, have your attorney call Daniel Finch. No promises, but it's worth a conversation." She looked at him for a long moment. Something moved across her face that might have been confusion or relief, or the complicated feeling that sits between them. "Why?" she asked. "Because you're good at your job," he said. "And because wasting people is the thing I try not to do." She left without another word. The 2 consultants said nothing. One of them was writing very quickly. The other had stopped pretending to look at her laptop. Cole turned back to the window. The courtyard tree was doing something nice in the afternoon light. He picked Mayo up at 4 o'clock. She ran across the schoolyard the way she always did, full speed, no hesitation, as though the distance between where she was and where he was constituted a problem that needed to be solved immediately. She hit him at full force. He caught her. She smelled like paint and something she'd probably eaten at lunch that he'd ask about later. "Did you use the face today?" she asked into his shoulder. "Not today." She leaned back to look at him. "Was today a good one?" He thought about the conference room, the courtyard tree, Rebecca in the doorway, Priya deciding to stay. The 3 clients confirmed. The Saturday pancakes. He thought about the morning 18 months ago when he'd moved them into the apartment with the park at the end of the street. And Maya had pressed her face against the window and said, "Dad, I can see the park from here." And he'd decided then that this was the number that mattered. And all the other numbers had to justify themselves against that one. "Yeah," he said. "Today was a good one." She hopped down, took his hand. They walked to the car. "Pancake Saturday?" she said. "Pancake Saturday?" he said. She swung their arms once, satisfied. And that was enough. It had been enough for a long time.